Hello, my friends. I thought this subject here would be better for a ramble than a roleplay. Um, I just want to show you, like, the first video of my video game collection, as I have a pretty big one. For somebody who doesn't do it, as a, I guess, professional, kind of like the angry video game nerd or something like that. So I just have a stack of games I want to show you. These are all my Super Nintendo, the Super NES games. When I was born, the new system at the time was the N64, but my parents were poor, so all I had to play with was their old Super Nintendo, which was fine by me. It was a great collection, and it gives me great nostalgia that I still play with today. In fact, a lot of these games I play on the Switch account because they still hold up. So I just want to talk to you about them and show you them because I know that game collection videos are very popular here on YouTube. I'm going to do them in 4 categories just so I can keep track of them, but also maybe you would like that too. The first category will be the first-party Nintendo-made games. Then I'm going to do a short one based on game shows. Then I'm going to do one based on third-party support, like Konami, for instance. And then I'm going to do the last one will be on like licensed products, like movies. So let's get started. First game I'm going to show you will be the first one that I ever played, Super Mario World. This one's probably my favorite Mario game. I do kind of flip-flop between this and Mario Bros. 3, but this one, in essence, I guess, is my favorite Mario game, and it's the style I prefer on Super Mario Maker 2. When I was younger, I always liked this. I especially liked the levels with Yoshi. If I lost Yoshi, I would go to another level just to get him back. The graphics are really good, the controls are superb, and it has aged incredibly well. The only thing is, it's hard to play this after you've been playing Super Mario Maker 2 for a while, because it does control a lot different. So, but yeah, I love this game. There's not a memory, but my parents have a photo of me playing it when I was 1 year old. No joke. Next is Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. When it comes to like pure playtime, I've probably played this more because I had so much trouble with this. I'm not sure if it's that way now, but I found this game significantly harder than Super Mario World when I was younger. Beating Super Mario World was not that hard when I was younger. I did it a couple of times, but this game, for some reason, some of these levels just really caused me trouble. Nowadays, I can get by them fine, but even then, some of them are kind of difficult. I love this game too, much like with Super Mario Bros. 2. I love how it's so different than its predecessor, and yet so good. I like how it spawned many sequels. They aren't that great, except for Woolly World, but it's cool. Yoshi's Island. Next, I have Super Mario AllStars. I used to play this a lot because I loved the fact that, I don't know, it was more Mario because I loved Super Mario World, and it never dawned on me that these were necessarily inferior because they were older. I just played them. I loved Super Mario Bros. 3, I think because of the map. I just always liked maps in video games. I also loved Super Mario Bros. 2, always played as Luigi because of his jumping prowess. And I also played Super Mario Bros. When I was younger because it's just good. I didn't play a whole, like when I was 5, I didn't play a whole lot of Super Mario Lost Levels, and if anybody's played that, you'd understand why. It is hard. Really, really hard. In fact, it wasn't even released in America because of how hard it was. But I think this is a great collection. Honestly, I'd rather play this than the originals, and I probably say that because I grew up with this instead. maybe it'd be different if I grew up with a regular NES. So, Super Mario AllStars. Next, probably the game I played most of all of my NES games. Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars. There are two reasons why I played this so much. The first reason is I just love the adventure. I don't know why, but the story really intrigued me when I was younger, and still kind of does. Not kind of anything, still does. The fact that it looks so different and it plays so different than any other Mario game, I guess really spurred something in me. And I just love adventure games, and this is probably the most adventurous Mario game. Now, there is a second reason I play this a lot, and that's because the memory battery in this cartridge isn't that great. I would often, like halfway through, lose the data and have to start all over. But because I love the game so much, I did it anyway. As if anybody, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before in a video, but if anybody knew, I was homeschooled, and school lasts 3 hours maybe when you're homeschooled, so you have a bit more free time. So often I would just spend my free time playing this again. I do really hope this comes back on. This comes on the Switch. I don't think it will because of licensing issues, but if it does, I'd be all over it. It's also aged remarkably well, so if you guys can get a copy of this, I would highly recommend it. It is very, very good. It's not the deepest RPG, but if you don't like RPGs necessarily, this is great. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Next, we have a classic, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Along with RPG, I probably played this the most as well, and that's because this is a big game for the time. Like, this game is long, and one thing I like about games is, it probably spurred from this, is when it feels like you've been there a while and you're still not towards the end. Zelda games are great at that. I think Skyward Sword on the Wii is probably the best at that, because that game took a while, and I could have sworn we were done a couple of times. But I used to play this all the time because, like I said, I love adventure games, and there's no bigger adventure game, honestly, than Zelda. This probably has aged the best of all my NES games. It controls great. The difficulty is spot on, and it's not too cryptic. It doesn't hold your hand as much, although I would prefer maybe if it left more to exploration like the original Zelda, which I have been playing a lot on the Switch. But overall, this is probably my favorite. This or RPG is probably my favorite game on the NES, Super NES. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Next, we have a Nintendo game that some may not have heard of, called Stunt Race. Actually, this is called Stunt Race FX because of the FX chip in it. Now, I was actually really surprised to hear this was going to be on the Switch. So, I think I liked this game a lot when I was younger, but looking back at it now, I think it's okay. Like, obviously, I have to take off the nostalgia glasses to see how flawed it really is. Well, first off, the graphics is basically the same as Star Fox, which is not a bad thing, but just something you have to be aware of. The only thing I never really liked, which I never really caught on to when I was younger, was how stiff the controls are. I would often lose races because of how stiff the controls are that the CPUs never seem to have an issue with. Not to mention, you can't really win without playing as the buggy because it is the fastest. The buggy or the bike, but you don't get the bike until you beat the game. So, like, I don't have to recommend whether or not to play it because you can try for free if you happen to have a Switch Online account. So, the odds are you probably already have tried it. But this is Stunt Race FX. Now, the last game I have from Nintendo is Yoshi's Cookie. Funny story. This along with Rock and Roll Racing was the last Super NES game that my family bought in 2004. We got this along with Rock and Roll Racing, Sonic Advance 2, I believe, for the Game Boy Advance, and Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube at the same time. Now we got Rock and Roll Racing because me and my mom and my dad used to play it together all the time, but lost their cartridge over the years, so they got another one. And I got this game because I loved Yoshi, and I thought it would be like another Yoshi's Island, a Yoshi story, if you will. Now, I was a little disappointed when I played it because it was a puzzle game. Basically, I'm trying to think of what game it's like, but basically you move columns and you move the cookies up and down to get them matching. At first I was disappointed with it, but after a little bit warming up, it's actually not that bad. It is a little mundane and not as addicting as, say, Tetris, but as is, it's pretty good. If I don't think it's on the Switch thing, but if it isn't, you can find these fairly cheap. You can find it for like $5, $3 maybe. It's worth a pickup. It's pretty good. Yoshi's Cookie. Now on to the game shows. I'm going to keep this short because I didn't play these as much. First we have Wheel of Fortune. Probably the one I played most of when I was younger because it was the only game show I'd watch. That and Price is Right. It's basically Wheel of Fortune. The graphics have not aged all that well. In fact, you're better off getting the PC version if you have an old PC that runs. I didn't play a whole lot of it because I didn't care much about game shows. Next, Family Feud. I played it a little when I was older because that's when I started listening to like Richard Karn's Family Feud. But again, I didn't play a whole lot of it. One thing I hated was that, especially when I was younger, was that you had to spell words exactly right. And, like, actually, I don't think I had that much trouble. That probably wasn't the reason, because I have always spelled well. I just think I probably was boring. Yeah, it was somebody else in my family who couldn't spell. But, Family Feud. And last, we have Jeopardy. Gotta love Alex Trebek. Jeopardy was my least favorite. I don't think I ever played it because it's like, this is not for kids. Kids don't care. So I can't tell you if it's good or not. I don't really remember playing it. But, here it is. It's Jeopardy. Now, on to the third category, which is third-party games. And we're starting with one of my favorite games on the system, Castlevania 4 by Konami. Now, Castlevania has reputation of being unfairly difficult. I had never played the first three, but basically, a lot of people find them difficult because of the limited control scheme. But in Castlevania 4, the whip can be used in 8 directions instead of just the 2. And it can also be used in other ways. And I think that's probably the best thing about this game is the control. Of any other game, I feel the most immersion here, as I feel like I'm literally Simon Belmont due to the impressive controls that not only have aged so well, but still are superior to many games today. So, it's like I can't recommend it enough, and I cannot wait to see if it comes onto the Switch. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it will, because apparently Castlevania has a game collection out, and Castlevania 4 is on it, along with the first 3. So I don't think we'll see those games anytime soon. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. Castlevania 4, or actually Super Castlevania 4. And next we have something I was talking about earlier, Rock and Roll Racing. I'm not sure how well known this game is, but basically it's an isometric racing game that's similar to Mario Kart in the sense that it focuses a lot on items to deter your opponents. One cool thing about this game is its style and music. The music has a lot of great songs like Paranoia or something like that. Paranoia and Black Sabbath, some good stuff. And Born to Be Wild, that's the big one. The controls are a little loose and they're a little difficult to get used to, and I think some of the vehicles that you buy are a little overpowered, but maybe that's the reason. One funny thing is my mother used to love to use a code on here to unlock a racer named Olaf, who is very much overpowered. I don't know how to do it now, but that's pretty cool. Me and my dad used to play this a lot back in the day, so that's great stuff. Rock and Roll Racing. If you can find this cheap, this is worth it. The only thing is that it's a bit on the short side, so I wouldn't spend more than $5 on it. Next is another racing game, and there's going to be a few racing games, because I just liked racing games when I was younger. Top Gear by Kimco. This is a racing game that's similar. That has a similar camera style to Mario Kart, in which case the vehicle is from a back position and it goes for a pseudo 3D environment. One interesting thing I always found in this game was that regardless if you play one or two players, the second player's screen is always on the bottom, and in a one-player game, it's your rival who has a good car. I always found it interesting and pretty unique to a racing game. I used to play this all the time because, one, it was better than, say, Stunt Track, and two, it was, at the time, pretty difficult. Unfortunately, once I got good at these games, I know the pattern on the tracks. The game is pretty short and doesn't offer that much of a challenge. But I'd say, like I've been saying, it's worth about $5 to $10. If you can find it for about $5, I would get it. I don't think it's going to come on the Switch membership because Kimco, I don't think they work that close to Nintendo, so that's unfortunate. But the controls work fine. The graphics are pretty good and they have aged pretty well. And the music is awesome. No, seriously, go look up the soundtrack for Top Gear and listen to some of those tracks. There are a few of them. They're kicking. Again, Top Gear. Next is a very obscure game called Rocky Road. I was about to say Rocky Road, but it's like, no, that's an ice cream. Basically, I consider this like a hybrid of Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog. There are some levels that are focused on platforming, and there's some levels focused on running. Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. If you hold the Y button, the Rocky's movement run speed increases dramatically. So much so that you can't run on short areas because the camera can't catch up to you. It's actually a pretty good game and pretty difficult. I don't think I've ever completed it, so it's really worth it if you can find it. It's probably the rarest game that I have for the Super NES, and I'm not sure how much it would cost, but if you find it for even like $10, it's worth it. I don't even think it went on the Virtual Console. One unique thing is that it has a health system similar to Mario, where if you get power up, you get one free hit. In this case, it's hairstyles, and each one does a different thing, and that's really cool to figure out which one that you prefer. My personal favorite, if you play, is the blue boomerang. So keep that in mind. Again, Rocky Rodent. Sorry, guys. Next, we have Mech Warriors by Activision. Now, I do know that, I'm not sure if Activision does it now, but I do know that Mech Warriors is a fairly popular gaming franchise now. This, one thing you have to realize about this is that it is dated. The graphics are very, like, it looks like Star Fox, but from a first person point of view. I used to play this all the time because, well, I just like the idea of mechs, and it was a fairly difficult game at first until I learned a pattern. Always go after the easiest missions because they all pay around the same. And also, go for lasers and missiles. You'd understand if you played. Ultimately, this is a pretty good game, but I have not played newer Mech Warrior games, so I'm not sure what kind of value this has now. I'm gonna say you're probably better off playing one of the newer ones, but again, something to keep in mind if you want to like go back to the past. Again, Mech Warriors on the Super NES. Next, we have a racing game called Super Off-Road. And I think this is based on an arcade game, but I'm not sure. Basically, what this game is you're playing from a top-down point of view with four trucks. You have a second player play the blue truck. You basically race around the track for 3 laps, and the winner gets a certain amount of money, and the next ones get a certain amount of money, depending on where you rank. It's an interesting game in the fact that it has kind of a snowball effect. Like if you win a number of games in a row, a number of races in a row, you will build up cash and be able to upgrade your vehicle where you become better and better and so much better than the people who keep losing. So a lot of times when I was younger, if I lost the first couple of races, I would reset and start over. One thing about this game that I never quite understood was I once played to like 30 or 40 tracks in, and it felt like it kept going over and over. If this game has an end, I've never seen it. So maybe one day when I'm just bored out of my mind, I will go back to it and see if there's an end. Do I recommend it? I don't know really how much value it has in the days right now of Super Mario Kart. Oh, sorry, Mario Kart 8. But, and especially since it's not 4-player, you race against four trucks all the time, no more, no less, and it's only 2-player. And I know that's probably because of the Super NES's limitations on 2 controllers, but I believe they did eventually have a 4-controller port, but who knows. I don't really recommend it because I don't think it has any kind of value. It just has nostalgic value for me. Again, Super Off-Road. And last but not least in this category would be, I guess, the sequel, Super Off-Road, the Baja. I think that's what it says. Yeah, the Baja. Like in Baja, California. I say this is a kind of a loose sequel because instead of a top-down view, it's similar to Top Gear or Mario Kart, where it's behind the vehicle, and it has a pseudo 3D graphics. It doesn't look quite as good as Top Gear, and it runs at a much slower frame rate. But I will say that there is an ending, and it seems like the game is a bit harder and doesn't quite have that snowball effect. One thing I always found funny is there are quads in the game, and if you run them over, they make an oh sound, and you lose money. It's hilarious. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm demented, who knows. This is not multiplayer, at least I don't remember it being. And it does have a password system, which the other one could greatly have used. And despite its improvements, I'm not sure if I like this more because when I was younger, I didn't play a whole lot because the frame rate was really hard to get used to. Not to mention the turning was, the game kind of works on axis where instead of turning smoothly, if you turn you do this. And it's very hard to gauge how much I'm supposed to do that when I'm turning in that view. Do I recommend it? Not really, unless you just have a big Super NES collection and you want to increase it. So, Super Off-Road the Baja. And our last category for today will be the, I guess, the category of games based on existing products. Most of these will be movie games. So let's start with a Disney movie. And I have another one here somewhere. Okay. Aladdin. This, I played this a lot when I was younger. In fact, for a while it was my favorite game, probably because I love the movie so much. It's basically your generic platforming game where you jump on enemies to defeat them. Aladdin can grab apples and throw them at people to distract them. That Cave of Wonders level is infamously difficult. Basically, it plays throughout pretty much all of the events in the movie. It's not terribly long nor difficult, so it won't take you very long. Now there is a Genesis version, but apparently it's a lot different than this Super NES version. So if you want to get one, there's no reason to avoid the other if you're worried about it being the same game, because apparently it's not. The controls are a little loose, but not too bad. Do I recommend it? Honestly, yes, in a way, because it seemed like the 90s were the best time for movie-based games. The 80s sucked, and the 21st century has sucked for movie-based games. It seems like the 90s was like that fluke decade where the movie-based games were actually pretty good. Like GoldenEye was in 98, I think. So, Aladdin. Let's hope Disney does not strike this. And the second last Disney-based game I have is The Lion King. Possibly my favorite Disney movie. Similar to Aladdin, it's just your basic platformer that goes through the events of the movie. I'm not sure if it's a better game, but I think it does follow the story a little better. One interesting, similar to Aladdin, it has that one level that's infamous, the I Can't Wait to Be King. That level's impossible. One interesting thing is that the character does change, and that's because Simba gets older. And what's great is that the gameplay kind of changes. It goes from young Simba, which is more platform, to old Simba, which is more combat focused. And that's really interesting. Similar to Aladdin, it's a bit short and really not that difficult if you're old and you're a veteran of games. Now, do I recommend it? Yeah, similar to Aladdin, if you want to see an actually good movie-based game, pick this up. Again, The Lion King on Super NES. Next, we have Tasmania, which is not based on a movie, but it is based on an existing product. Basically, I'm not even sure what it's about. Something about you're Taz and you run down the street and try to eat birds. It's in the view of, say, Top Gear, where you're behind the vehicle, which would be Taz himself, and we go backwards, the camera doesn't move. It's basically stationary behind him. If you turn around, you're facing him, and you can't see where you're going. It's a really odd game. Even when I was younger, I never understood what the focus or the concept was. It's like you had to eat birds, but like I can't remember exactly. It's been so long. Something about it was off. Now, do I recommend it? It's hard for me to say since I don't remember very well, but I didn't play it that much, so I'm going to say it's probably not that great. But again, Tasmania. Next, we have Jurassic Park by Ocean. This is, I would say, loosely based on Jurassic Park. You play Grant, but you don't really follow any events of the movie. Now, I do know this is a lot different than the Genesis version, which some people consider to be the superior version, and does follow the movie a lot closer. basically the concept of this game, I think, is you go around this open-esque world, finding dinosaur eggs and trying to escape the island. Honestly, even to this day, I'm not entirely sure what the goal of the game was. Like, it was fairly cryptic. And I didn't own any manuals, so I had no clue what I'm supposed to do. The one thing I always loved when I was younger is that if you go inside buildings, it goes into a first-person view. And I don't know why, I just loved that. And I also loved how you had to find card keys around the island and batteries for your night vision goggles, or you couldn't go into the dark. So it's like, this game actually would be really great. I'd play it more often, but there's one fatal flaw. There's no way to save your progress. There's no battery save, and there's no password system. And that really is a big flaw because this game is pretty long for an NES game, and I never once completed it because I had no clue what I was doing, and there was no save. If there was a way to save or set a password, I'd play a lot more often just to figure out what on earth I'm supposed to do. Do I recommend it? Again, it's hard to say because it's actually a pretty good game that has aged fairly well, but that except for the inability to save. So I'm going to say no. It sucks, but that's the way it is. Again, Jurassic Park on the Super NES. And last but not least, we have Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi, made by THQ, back when THQ actually made decent games. Unfortunately, I never owned the other two, and that kind of sucks because I would have loved to play through the entire trilogy on the Super NES. But this basically follows, for the most part, the events of the movie. I played it a lot, but not as much as I would have because even on the easiest difficulty, this game is freaking difficult. It is very easy to die, and while you want to play the Jedi Luke, it's a lot better, in my opinion, to play Chewbacca, because not only does he have the most health, but he has a spinning attack, which makes him basically invulnerable. But again, I would have loved, despite the difficulty, I would have loved to play through the entire trilogy on my Super NES. Unfortunately, I never owned the other two. Maybe if I find them in a yard sale or swap meet, I'll get them. Do I recommend it? Honestly, I do. They're pretty good. If you're going through, like, if I had to pick the most faithful representations of video games, I would say this is probably the best outside of Lego Star Wars. So, again, Return of the Jedi from THQ. Well, that's, yeah, literally all of the Super NES games I own. I'm glad to do this because I know a lot of people love these game collection ASMR videos. So that's really all I have to say. Please subscribe and actually click that notification bell if you actually want to be notified of when I post videos. If you have any comments or suggestions, please comment down below. I would actually appreciate if you guys could tell me why you personally like game compilation videos. And if you want to see updates to my uploads, please follow me on Twitter. Link will be in the description below. Until next time, goodbye and God bless.